Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today, the phrase we have is to be fed up. To be fed up, and it basically means to be bored or to be mentally tired of a particular situation. To be bored or mentally tired of a particular situation. Now, it can also mean a little bit depressed. So, for example, you might hear your friend say, "Oh, I'm really fed up of this job. I've been doing it now for 10 years. I'm fed up of my boss's behaviour. He always acts inappropriately. Today I feel really fed up. It's wet outside and I don't have very much to do." To be fed up, a synonym of bored or perhaps even to be depressed. Now, the word fed is the past tense of feed. So it gives the idea that once you eat a heavy meal, you're contented and you don't want to leave or do anything else. But actually, once you eat a heavy meal, you feel contented and you don't want to do anything. But yet, when you're fed up, the expression would indicate that you're not happy, you're not contented, but you might just be sitting there doing nothing and complaining. To be fed up. Today's story, which comes from my weekly lesson, is all about a young man called Roberto, who's really fed up trying to learn English. Now, he's been trying for quite some time, and we're going to use Roberto today as a case study of how many students feel when they try to learn English. So let's go through it. So it says here, Roberto's story of learning. Roberto, a young man, sought my assistance with a persistent issue: retaining English knowledge. He expressed this concern in Spanish, saying truculently, "I can't seem to retain anything related to English, Teacher Joseph." As we conversed, it became evident that Roberto held a high-level managerial position and led a generally contented life. In his 30s, married and with 2 children, he insisted that he had no time for learning. However, my experience has taught me that when people claim they lack time, it often reflects a lack of willingness rather than a genuine time constraint. Rather than genuine time constraints. If it was a priority, he would get it done. Roberto presented a series of arguments and tasks to convince both of us that he truly had no time. He proudly reiterated, "I have no time." I challenged him, saying, "You sound conflicted. If time is genuinely scarce, why seek help? I am not in the business of selling time. I teach English." This unexpected question left Roberto silent. He then confessed, "I want to learn. I've been trying for 10 years. I responded, being here is a positive step, but unless you can carve out time and commit to speaking in English, progress will remain elusive. Despite my suggestions, each one was swiftly dismissed in Spanish. Listen to English podcasts during your commute. Roberto, no, that's my time to call my mother. How about your lunch break? Roberto, I need to meet my wife, and we usually have lunch together since we work in the same building. Can you make any changes? Roberto, no. Undeterred, I continued speaking in English, and he understood every word, yet he persisted in responding in Spanish. Curiously, I asked, "Why do you want to learn?" His reply, "Because it sounds good, and it could enhance my job prospects. I've always loved English." Roberto's case highlights the delicate balance between desire and practical constraints. As we explored solutions, I thought perhaps he'd find a way to unlock the time he claims not to have. And then I've given a series of exercises. One is to rewrite the above essay from Roberto's point of view. And then I go on to explore some questions about Roberto's intention and how it might not be clear enough. Also asking how the power of imagination could help Roberto. Also, why he was speaking in Spanish, as well as a few other questions. So there's questions there for every day of the week. So whenever you're listening to this podcast, follow the link through to my website and you can find this essay and some study questions for you all about Roberto, who's fed up and he's trying again to retain his English. Now, we spoke the other day about what's the difference between English teaching and English coaching, and I think this essay really helps us to understand the difference, because in English teaching, an English teacher wouldn't really have known how to handle Roberto. They simply would have said, "Okay, well, you're here now, here's grammar, let's practice." But an English coach is exploring the problem with Roberto to see how he can make some time to learn. Now, as I was saying the other day, English teaching and English coaching has, up until now, been the same thing, because teachers who care are always going to be exploring with you your reasons for learning, how you learn, just to see if you can do it better to meet your own ambitions. And that's a very different thing from just throwing grammar at you. It depends on you. If what you need is simply practice, conversation, grammar, and corrections, then a teacher is fine. A coach, on the other hand, will try to maybe just explore a little bit deeper with you what it is you need or why you think you need that thing. I think all coaches are teachers, but not all teachers are coaches. There are teachers out there who are trained just to impart information. They're not empathic people. They don't really have a connection there with you. But I think there's other teachers who connect on a kind of a deeper level to try to see what's happening with you. And that may mean an exploration of how you're learning, why you're learning, and maybe even where you are in your life right now, the kind of things that you're doing and why you're doing them. But I think most English coaches would be very interested in trying to find out what your beliefs are about learning. Because as I always say, a fountain can go no higher than its source. And that just means the pump under the fountain, if you see a beautiful fountain, it can't go any higher than the strength of the bit of machinery under it. And that's a metaphor to mean that your English will only go as far as your mind allows it to go. So if you believe you can't learn English, then you're not going to get very far. But if you believe you can, then of course, as we say in English, a proverb, the world is your oyster. And that means that you can go anywhere that you want as long as you believe you can do it. And when I say go anywhere, that's a metaphor, of course, for learning as much as you want. These days, as I mentioned the other day in a podcast somewhere, English coaching isn't something which has really progressed yet. It's still very much mixed up, associated with, and enjoyed as part of learning English. But I'm seeing more and more teachers are moving into the area of coaching. I think on one hand, many of those teachers are probably helping native speakers who want to learn a second language. And then as your language approaches some kind of B1, B2, or more advanced, then coaches would be there to help you as well. But in the beginning, of course, we simply need teachers. We need coaches as well to encourage us to move on and to help us. But I think probably a coach would be more useful for you once you are a little bit more advanced than the basics. By the way, speaking of exploring things, yesterday I tried to introduce music to my podcast. I had some feedback on that. Most of you told me that you didn't like it because you felt the music was a bit loud and overpowering, especially in the beginning. And a few of you told me that you really, really had a problem with it and didn't like it. So yeah, I've heard what you've said, and I'll maybe look at that again, bringing in some kind of jingle or intro before I start speaking. That looks like it might be your preferred way, because it seems that some of you couldn't really hear my voice properly because you weren't accustomed to hearing it with music. So that's something I'll probably come back to in the coming days or weeks. Maybe put the music before my voice, some kind of intro. It's just to make it sound a little bit more professional. But I was trying to create a radio kind of effect. But whatever happened, it didn't quite come out the way anybody expected. So I'll try again in the coming days. And finally, just to recap on this phrase, to be fed up. Yesterday, I brought you the story that shops have decided to ban or exclude some people from their stores that they know shoplift. So I just want to read to you a little bit of a story from today's media. So here we are. It says bosses act as police are too busy. Fed up store bosses banned more than 160,000 shoplifters last year due to a lack of police action to stop the thieves. Retailers are taking matters into their own hands to combat the soaring crime rates. So I think that's quite clear. To combat, of course, is to defeat or to fight against something. And then it says soaring crime rates. We had soaring last week. It just means something which is very high and increasingly going up like a bird going over the sky. Taking matters into your own hands means that you don't rely on someone else to fix something. You decide to do it yourself, and we usually use that when there's no alternative. For example, the government isn't doing anything about anti-social behavior in my town, so I decided to take matters into my own hands by approaching these young men and trying to stop them. Of course, a really bad idea that, but that's when you take something into your own hands. So I'll finish there just by reading this again so you can hear. Fed up store bosses banned more than 160,000 shoplifters last year due to a lack of police action to stop the thieves. Retailers are taking matters into their own hands to combat the soaring crime rates. And there we are. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Let's talk again soon. See you. Bye.